Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about fences, and we'd like to thank Chili Dog 5485, who gave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Some of the earliest fences were round pole fences, and they found evidence of this about 1200 BC, and very simple to make. So they would take posts and drive them into the ground close to each other, and they would have these posts grouped, a few feet apart, and then in between these posts they would stack logs, and they would interlace them so that you could create a fence. So no nails, no screws, and what an easy way to keep livestock in an area. And then the early colonists, what they were making was, they were called zigzag fences or snake fences. And like that, what's that game, like Jenga, where you stack stuff on top? No?
Jenga is taking stuff down.
Okay.
Like Lincoln logs?
Lincoln logs, great example. So Lincoln logs, you stack them at an angle so that they interlace, and that's how you'd make this interweaved fence. And again, you didn't need any tools. So just very simple. And then what became popular with the colonists were the white picket fences. So in the 1600s, to keep chickens and animals out of the garden and kind of define your property, they started putting up these white picket fences. And most homes, the early colonists, what they used was a mixture of lime, water, and salt to paint their homes and their fences, and that was called whitewashing.
Interesting. I thought for sure you were going to start with the Great Wall of China.
That's a pretty good fence.
Yeah, it's kind of a big one. Let's start off with the different types of fences.
Okay, so probably the main fences are wood, composite, vinyl, wrought iron, aluminum, chain link, bamboo, and I'll throw pet fences in there too.
Well, of course you would.
If you're thinking about a very decorative fence, you can look at wrought iron, and these are very tough. They're corrosion resistant. The problem.
What does wrought mean?
Wrought? That's an old term for worked. So blacksmiths used to work the iron, so it was wrought iron. And wrought iron, the problem is they usually rust over time. So even though they're corrosion resistant, eventually you're probably going to have to repaint. And if you've moved into a house and it has an existing wrought iron fence that's starting to get rusty, to repair this, you're going to need to scrape it with wire. And one thing you need to think about is if you think the fence is older than 1978, you really should do a lead test, because you don't want to be putting and scraping these particles in the air if it has lead in it. But anything past 1978, scrape it. You can use a file to file down any rough spots. And then most manufacturers recommend that you prime this with a rusty metal or a metal primer. And then most companies recommend an oil-based paint. And if you get gloss, it's going to last the longest. And then I would use a paintbrush and work from the top of the fence down and work in sections. And wrought iron is primarily going to be a picket style. So you're not, if you're looking for a privacy fence, you're not thinking about wrought iron. Now, if you want the look of wrought iron, but you don't want the maintenance, you can pick up aluminum. And these are long-lasting. They won't rust. And again, this is not for privacy, so it's a picket style. And you can maintain this with just a hose sprayer. So it's funny, the thread I saw with manufacturers of vinyl fencing, wood, all these different fencing companies, almost all of them recommended Simple Green as the cleaner to maintain it.
So like in the concentrate?
Right, it's the concentrate, and then just put it into some kind of hose and sprayer and clean it like that.
Easy enough.
Yeah. Another style fence that's very low maintenance is vinyl, and you can get this in picket or privacy. A lot of the stores are carrying fence kits, so they have the panels either 6 or 8 feet wide and then either 4 or 6 feet tall, which is really cool. So you're putting up your posts, and then you're just dropping in these panels in between them. So very easy to put together. And then a lot of the vinyl fences, I was looking at a couple different manufacturers. Many of them have 10-year warranties against fading.
Oh, wow.
It's stronger than wood, so it's more expensive than wood up front, but it just doesn't, break apart like wood does.
You don't have to worry about staining it or...
Right, and the warping, and then to clean it, we talked about the Simple Green. A couple of the manufacturers said, get simple green, get some type of hose on sprayer. And then we used, when we did that job for your dad for his driveway,
Right.
we used that Hyde Pivot Jet Pro.
Yeah.
So that's a nice tool that you could use on a vinyl fence. They also recommend that you can use the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser
I love that thing.
for stains. And then most of the manufacturers said never use anything abrasive, so they want you to use a very soft brush and then a mild pH neutral liquid soap for basic cleaning. And then one thing I would recommend, when we were talking before about landscaping beds, one of the things that I see more and more with especially a vinyl style is putting a landscape bed all around where you're putting your fence so you don't have the grass right up to it.
Right.
Because the problem with vinyl is you start edging, so you're using your grass trimmer and those blades are hitting the vinyl. It stains the vinyl green.
Right.
And so if we can keep a landscaping bed, again, we have less grass to cut,
Right.
less watering, and then we have this nice landscaping bed that we're not going to beat up our fences. So I think that's kind of a nice tip. Another very easy to maintain fence is the composites, and there's a few different manufacturers and different styles. Basically what it is, a blend of natural wood and plastic, recycled plastic. Many of the manufacturers use a very high amount of recycled material. So it looks like wood, it has the grain and color of wood. You can get it in a variety of colors. Like vinyl, I think it comes in white and tan.
Yeah.
Where composite, you can actually get it to look like wood, so a lot of different colors. And what's nice about this, you'll see 10, 15, and 20-year warranties. And I saw one manufacturer that had a 25-year warranty on their composite fences, so really nice.
So does this come in panels too?
I've seen this in panels. I've seen it picket and privacy, 6 feet wide. So you put your posts up and stage those so that these 6 foot wide panels go right in between them. There's no staining. This doesn't warp or crack like wood. And with most of these composite, what they're using is either a steel or a wood gate, and then the rest of the fence would be composite.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, for an economical and easy fence to put up, you can get Chainlink, and this is galvanized steel wire that usually comes in 50-foot lengths. You can get it 3 feet up to 12 feet tall.
Wow.
And you put up your posts, and then you just roll out this fencing, and then you use galvanized wire to tie it to the fence post and rails. So it's fairly easy to put up. So this
easy to climb too. This is what everybody in my parents' neighborhood has.
Really?
So it's just you look into their backyard and everybody, it's just a sea of.
So you're like a
chain
pro
link.
at hopping chain link?
Well, I didn't know there was different types of fences when I was growing up.
You thought that was it?
That was it.
So you can actually, so this you can see through, so it's not privacy, but you can add vinyl or plastic strips.
Right.
You can weave through it, to make it look more decorative, or if you want your privacy. Now, if you've moved into a house and it has a chain link that's looking bad, what you can do is you can paint this. So again, you want to make sure that it's not pre-1978, but you can take a wire brush, you can remove all the rust, anything peeling, and then you can use Rust-Oleum. They have a Chainlink fence paint. It's that metallic silver color only.
Right.
And you would use a roller and just roll this on. Use a paintbrush on the top rail and the sides, the posts, and then you would just use a roller.
And then you hop the fence into your neighbor's yard and paint their side too?
I would paint their side first. And then, yeah. I don't love that silver color. And I've seen some that they've painted dark green, and it really blends nice. I think that's nice. And then I've also seen white and black. And I saw one house that had a really nice...
A multicolor?
No, it's just a high gloss black. And it really looked nice. It looked much better, I think, than the regular silver color.
Well, because the white stuff, as soon as it starts to, chip, and it looks really bad.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so probably the dark green or black would be a nice color to kind of freshen it up. One other thing you can do with chain link is cover it with these rolls of bamboo. These are 3/4 to 1 inch bamboo that comes 4 to 6 feet tall, and then 6 to 6.
So what do you mean, like bamboo?
So it's
like stalks of bamboo.
It's stalks of bamboo, and they come 6 to 16 feet tall. They have a wire holding them together, and it's rolled up. So very cool, and you can just tie this. So if you have a chain link fence, you can just, again, use galvanized wire, you'd use like a 16 gauge wire, and then every 12 feet you're going to attach it to the chain link, and so you can cover. So if you don't want to paint,
right,
you can just go get some bamboo and roll this out, and it really has an interesting look. They have
so kind of an island feel.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like tropical paradise in your backyard. You can get it in, they have black, they have a couple different shades of browns and tans, so just very interesting looking. Bamboo is interesting. Some species can grow 24 inches or more in one day.
Wow.
Amazing, huh? So completely renewable. There's many of the manufacturers, they use no pesticides or fertilizers. Bamboo absorbs twice as much carbon dioxide from the air and produces 35% more oxygen than trees. And where, trees take decades before you can grow new full-grown trees, you can harvest bamboo every 3 to 7 years. Interesting, huh?
Yes.
So on wood fences, you can use this too. So let's say you have a terrible-looking old wood fence. You can take this bamboo and roll it out and use screws and just screw it to the wood. Now, if you have pets that you want to keep in your yard, but you don't want to put up a traditional fence, you can get pet fence, which is pretty cool. It's this wire that you put all around the border. So you're going to bury this wire. You have a transmitter inside the house and a receiver on a waterproof collar. And let's say we have a dog with this collar on. It's getting close to the border. A tone starts sounding. And then if it gets too close to the edge of the property, it gets a static shock. Which is pretty wild. I was looking up a few of these pet fences. Have a Heart, and it's HAVAHART. They have one of the top-rated systems. You have to keep the transmitter inside the house or the garage, and then you run your wire out. What's interesting is they say you have to keep the transmitter away from a lot of metal, because let's say your dog, it can get unintended corrections.
Whoops.
If you have your transmitter by metal. So there's a tip for putting up a pet fence.
Well, this isn't bad even if you do have a regular fence too.
Yes, yeah.
Because like my friend, her dogs used to dig underneath the fence to get out. So they had to end up doing
the pet fence too. So both. Now, the most popular type of fences are wood in the U.S., and traditionally, cedar, redwood, and pine are probably the most popular types of wood. And you can get natural, pressure-treated. Cedar is nice because it's moisture and insect resistant. You can seal it, stain it. Redwoods, they're rot and insect resistant. They take stain very well. And then pine, it has to be treated, and then you can either paint this or stain it. And there's a wide variety of styles and prices. You can get privacy fences. You can get kits where they have this built, or you can create your own.
Right.
You're going to have privacy fences. They're usually about 6 feet tall, and the slats, they're real tight, so you can't see through it.
Right.
And then picket fences are usually shorter with gaps between the pickets. And then you can get this shadow box, so it's alternating slats on the front and the back of the fence. So it's like a picket on this side and a picket on the other side, so that you can't see directly through it, but if you look at it through an angle, you can see through it. And
Sounds fun.
And these are usually about 6 feet tall, and that 1.5 to 2.5 inch spacing is pretty common. So I have a few tips if you're putting up a fence.
I should hope so.
For wood fences, I would keep the pickets about 2 to 5 inches off the ground. I would always check with the homeowners association in your community to see what guidelines they have, because a lot of them can give you a fine and make you take it down if it doesn't fit into their standard.
Well, my cousin just moved into it. It's a brand new subdivision, and his association says that the fence can only be 5 feet tall, I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, most of them now are, sold as 6 foot.
Right, 4 or 6, very common. So they decided on 5.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. So definitely check. And then I would always, before you dig, let's say we're digging our posts, I would always call 811, or online you can go to call811.com. So it's CALL and the numbers 811.com. And then what they'll do is they'll come out and put little flags everywhere where there's underground utilities. And then definitely know your property line. So you need to get your property survey. And if you don't have the survey, you can look on your deed, you can go to the county recorder's office or the assessor's office, and you probably want to stay just inside that to be safe.
Right.
So there's some companies that recommend 6 inches. I don't know whether I'd go that deep on the side. But if you stay just inside the property line, you're not going to have a problem. And then I would probably talk to the neighbor because, you know, if they're going to be putting up a fence, or who knows, maybe they're going to be changing their fence in a year or so. And sometimes you can share the cost. It's weird sometimes, the different styles that are next to each other, different houses. So it's nice to talk to the neighbors, let them know what you're going to do, and see if maybe you can get some uniformity.
Well, because my cousin that just moved into his house, you know, the one neighbor did wood, the next one did composite, so, you know.
Probably looked similar.
Right, but one was white, one is natural wood.
Right.
So, you know, he had to decide which side to go with.
Right.
But talking about the property lines, I was watching the news last night, and this guy just got put in jail because he was so mad about the property line. He took a bulldozer to his neighbor's fence.
Oh, you're kidding.
So it was an amazing video, but so make sure you know your property line. And
Wow. Since wood fences are the most popular in the U.S., we'll go over some basic tools. If you're thinking about putting up the fence yourself, you're going to need a circular saw, a drill, because you're going to want to create pilot holes, and then you're going to need a driver to drive your screws. You're going to need at least a level, and I really like these post levels. So it's a two-sided level. They're plastic and they wrap around two sides of your post, and it allows you to plumb it.
Never knew what those were for.
Yeah, they're very cool. They're pretty inexpensive. And then I would get clamps, so at least 2 clamps. And if you're doing this by yourself, and I've done a couple projects where if you're putting up your horizontal rails, I would take a clamp and clamp it around the post. So I'd make my marks where I want that rail to be. I take my clamps and wrap it around the post, and on the C part of the clamp, I can rest my rail, and it'll kind of hold it up for me while I'm screwing it in place or putting my pilots in. So that's very handy. And then if you're putting up panels, the clamps can hold it in place for you. Again, if you're doing it by yourself, you're going to need some type. The screws that you use, I would use screws rather than nails. Use decking screws or exterior grade galvanized screws. You're going to need some type of post hole digger or something to create your holes for your posts. And then you're going to need gravel, sometimes concrete, and a tape measure. Now for laying out your fence, you've got to lay out where you're going to be putting your fence posts, and then you're going to plan for a gate if you're adding one. You're going to use marking paint, or you can even use something as easy as flour to mark it. Usually you're going to put your posts 6 feet apart, but depending on if you're using panels, they can be 8 feet long, so you're going to want to base that on what you're using. When you dig your post holes, you want them about 12 inches wide and anywhere from 24 to 32 inches deep. Usually want them about a third of the height of the post, so however tall it's going to be. You're going to use a post hole digger, or you're going to rent a power auger. And one of these last fences I put in, man, I mean, it was such a struggle. The ground was so terrible trying to get through it with my chicken muscles. That I had to, we went out and we rented a power auger, and wow, it does a great job. A little hard to control at first, but once you get the hang of it, it really is nice. And then I would install my ends and corner posts first. And once you get those in place, you're going to tie a string to the outside edge of it to keep a nice line when you put...
A straight line?
A straight line when you put the rest of the posts in. And then for the posts themselves, most manufacturers recommend that after you dig your hole, you're going to drop about 6 inches of gravel in that hole for drainage. And then you can use gravel and soil to keep the posts in place. Some people recommend just using concrete for your corner and the posts that you're hanging your gate off of, and then other people suggest using concrete for all of them. But it really depends. You know, you can really get it compacted pretty nice just with gravel. Then you don't have that. Let's say if you ever decide to move this fence one day or take it out and replace it, it's much easier to move it. For the concrete, I would bevel it. If it's above grade, I would have it so that when water hits it, it's going to run off of it. And then there's a couple top-rated companies for posts. Quikrete, and that's Quik, RETE. They have a fast-setting concrete mix. Comes in 50-pound bags. What's wild about this is you pour this dry into the hole, and then you pour your water on top of it, and then it sets up. So very cool. You don't have, because we used to, years ago, we used to always have to mix it. You'd take a wheelbarrow and mix it. You'd have to have it mixed just right, and it was a real hassle, and you have to shovel it into the holes. And so you can use this Quickcrete, and then what I would do is on two sides of the post, I would take a 2x4 coming down at a 45-degree angle, drive a stake in the ground, and then put a nail or two or a screw to hold that post perfectly plumb. And you're going to use your level to make sure it's straight up and down. And then another highly rated product is from Sakrete, and that's Sakrete. And this one's interesting. So in this, they recommend you pour your water in first, and then you pour the dry mix on top of it. And this is a fast setting. They say it sets up in a half an hour. You get it where it needs to be, you put your level on it, and step back, and it'll set up so quickly that they don't recommend bracing.
That's cool.
So very interesting. I would let my concrete cure for a couple of days before I start putting my panels on or my rails, and then I would screw them to the posts with, usually the most popular is a number 8, 2.5-inch long deck or galvanized screw. And then if you're using pickets, you're going to get your top rail, your bottom rail, then you're going to put all your individual pickets onto that. Once you're done, the posts can either be flush, or you can extend them about 4 inches above the fence height, and then you would put a post cap on top of that, and that's going to give that post a little more protection because it's going to have that beveled shape to it, and it kind of makes it look a little more decorative too.
Right.
So those are some of the key things you need to be thinking about when you're putting up a fence. You know what the Egyptians used for their posts instead of a level?
No.
A plumb bob. And they have evidence that they had plumb bobs at least 2600 BC.
What is it?
Wild. So you've got this string that you put a weight on, and because of gravity, that string is going to be perfectly vertical. And what's wild is they designed these planks of wood, so they had a perfectly square, or it was square corners. It was a rectangular piece of wood, and they had two small shelves on top of this wood, and on that edge of the top shelf they screwed the top of the string, and then hanging down past that second shelf they had their weight or their plumb bob, and then they had little marks on it. And so when they moved that rectangular piece of wood back and forth to where the string lined up with that center line, they knew that the edges of that wood were perfectly vertical, and they would use that for their buildings. Genius, isn't it?
It is.
There you go. You know what else the Egyptians used?
No.
For protecting wood, they used linseed oil. So they used the oil from the flax plant, and actually they used this oil to move heavy stones, and they used it not only for protecting wood, but the cases that they put their mummies in, they used linseed oil for that.
Nice.
So one of the top rated products that you can get to protect wood is Cabot, C-A-B-O-T. They have something called Australian timber oil. And
Not
this
Egyptian?
They should use that, man. So this is oil-based. It has UV protection, and it's made primarily from linseed oil and tung oil. And tung oil is the oil from the seed of the nut of the tung tree. This has been used forever for protecting wood. It's absorbed very easily. They have, I think, 5 colors for this timber oil, and so it's very easily absorbed. It gives great protection.
And the can looks really cool, too.
Does it?
Yeah.
And this remains flexible. It doesn't flake off. And then another very highly rated product from Cabot is their SPF. Now, this is water-based. They have 10 different tones on this. This has a flat finish, UV protection, and they have a couple of different lines. So they have a 24, a 36, and a 48. And that's how many months of protection you're going to get out of it. And that's an acrylic resin. So what's nice about this is you can use this even in damp conditions,
right,
because it's water-based. Now for solid color stains, and these are more like a paint, they don't absorb like a traditional stain. So Behr, B-E-H-R, they have a solid color waterproofing wood stain that's rated very high. Benjamin Moore, they have Arbor Coat, It's called their Solid Deck and Siding Stain. Thompson's Water Sealed Deck and House Solid Latex was rated very high. And then Behr also has, in their semi-transparent, they have a weatherproofing wood stain that's rated high. And then for just a clear protectant, Thompson's Water Seal Advanced Natural Wood Protector and Thompson's Waterproofer and Tinted Wood Protector were the highest rated.
When do you know it's time to reseal or repaint?
So you can just throw some water on it. So if you splash a few drops of water on your fence, and if the water, so kind of like when we talked about, protecting granite countertops,
right.
We're using the water test. So I would use the same water test on your fence, and if it absorbs that water in less than 5 seconds, it needs to be stained. If it beads off or it doesn't absorb for 10, 15 seconds, then you can wait till the next season before you stain it.
Do you have anything else to add?
I would say, a fence, it's a big investment. I would look at it every season. If you have wood, keep it protected. So if you have a stain or paint, just keep after it, keep it sealed. If you have vinyl or composite, main thing with that is you just want to keep them clean. And then metal, you want to keep it from rusting up. So you want to continually look at it, scrape it, and then prime and keep it painted.
And then if you're putting in a new fence, this isn't something you're just going to do one weekend.
Right.
I mean, you kind of have to...
It's a project.
Yeah, you have to plan it out.
Pen on paper.
Right. Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and soon Spotify.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe there as well.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.